All right, so we are going to look at some models here about flange and gallery lids. So these are my teaching aids. Let me sort them out, and we'll talk about what's going on here in a second. And you can see that the ones on this side, right, have what we call galleries. The ones over here will be lids with flanges, and let me sort these out really fast. This one goes over here. This one goes over here. This one goes over here. All right, so let's first look at the lids we are not going to really make today. So this is a lid or a pot, right? You can see it has a very little gallery there. And then these lids would just like bloop, fit on there. Woohoo, right? You can see that fits on there good, doesn't slide off. This lid fits on there, fits on there. So these lids, none of these lids have a flange or anything, and they all fit on there. So we're not going to talk about those. Those will be on another video. And if you want to make those, I get it, you got to watch other videos. Otherwise, we would end up talking about lids for way too long. So these ones, right, you'll see the bottoms don't have anything. They're just smooth on top. You see that? And then the lid then needs some sort of mechanism to hold them on. So this is the ones, like the ones we saw. This is called a flange, right? That flange like drops down into space, and that flange then fits into my pot just like that, right? How do we make this? Because it has stuff. You actually throw this lid upside down like this, right? Let's put it so you guys can see it better. You actually throw this like this with this and the blue part, and then you trim off the blue part later, right, when it's leather hard, and then it flips around and woo, it goes on there, right? So why do we even need a flange or a gallery? I forgot to tell you that, John skipped ahead. So this is a lid without a flange, right? It's just a beautiful little thing. This is a lid this is a base without a gallery, right? So it will act as a lid, right? It will just plop right on there and it's covered. The issue is for you, if you're careful, if you know, you'll be fine, right? If you're not careful or a friend comes over and you say, oh, grab the sugar jar over there, and then your friend just grabs it and starts walking over, if they walk around and it's tilting back and forth, this lid can just like, and then fall off onto the ground, right? Broken, and everybody's sad. So if you make a lid with like this and it has a flange on it, right? You see how it locks in there. It doesn't just fall off on its own. So, and then let's talk about shape and form. You could do anything you want, right? As long as the critical moment, the critical spot that we need to measure is how these two bits fit together. So the critical point is the width of this to there that we measure to fit the width of this to there, right? And we make this one to fit second, right? Now, there's another kind of lid. So we see this one, we trim this one, right? We already talked about that. We can make this kind of lid too, where it's just a flat piece of clay that does a little right-hand turn, goes up, and then comes back out again, right? And that lid will also kind of fit on there. I think that this lid on this pot looks a little bit awkward, right? You see how it's kind of this flat thing. So I like this pot with this sort of lid, just me, because it's kind of double curviness, right, all the way around. But I think like this sort of lid on this sort of pot looks pretty good, right? Because everything's flat and happy. So you think about what kind of lid would look the best with your kind of pot that you're thinking about making. It could be a cup, it could be a jar, it could be anything you want. You could have a vase with a lid, could be a storage container. Anything can have a lid. It's like, why would you need a lid on a cup? Well, some people like fill up their cup with coffee or whatever, and the lid will help keep it warm. Or it can be an aromatic thing, like if you have a very fragrancy tea, right? The tea, right, has this aroma, and when you put this little lid on when you're not actively drinking, right, it will keep that beautiful smell internalized, and that air inside will get all happy smelling, and then when you lift the lid off to take a drink, that you'll get that whoosh of smell, and it's quite an experience. It can be, right? So any questions about what we're making? And so let's bring these back into play. So one more time, because I like you see, so that this lid here fits on there is this sort of lid here, right? So that's that one, whoop, right? This one, let's take a closer look, woo. And then this sort of lid with the flange, which would be this guy here, boop, right, would be this lid here. So let's go side view, be that lid there, right? You see that? Oh, so beautiful. Fits on so good. Any questions about that? I'm going to put these away. I'm going to keep these close because we're going to need to talk about them here in a second. Okie dokie, so now we are going to make a base. So which part do you make first? Since we're making two things, you always got to make one thing before the other. So you'll always make the harder thing or the thing with more clay first. So in this case, since we're going to make something probably like this, no, not like that one, like this one, right? The bases are usually have more clay and are taller than the lid. The lid is relatively easier to make in comparison, so you always make the harder thing first. So I'm going to take off some clay. Now, also notice, look at my clay blob. I have a lot of clay here. Always, always, always wedge up one bigger chunk of clay, really good, and then pull off chunks to be your lid and pot. Always make them out of the same piece of clay. That's kind of rule guidance number one. Guidance number two is always, always, always make them at the same time. You always want to make them at the same time out of the same chunk of clay. Why? It's because the clay shrinks, right? If you use different wetnesses and drynesses of clay, they will shrink differently and won't fit very well. If you make one day, the body one day, make the lid the next day, the body has shrunk some and you want to make them at the same time, the same sitting. So I'm going to grab a chunk of clay off of here, right? Same chunk of clay. I'm just going to make a small guy. I'll add a little bit more. So this will be the body, right, of the whatever it is I'm making, right? I pat it into a ball. And then we'll need a couple extra tools today. We'll need some calipers, and we'll talk about that in a minute, right? And I have a couple different kinds. And then we're going to actually use this tool today, which we actually don't use that much, right, in class. John Hasegawa doesn't really like these squared off wooden ribs, but we will use them for a very specific part when making lids today. So here we flatten that out, slap it down. All right, here we go. So here, this is a very well wedged piece of clay. Right, so I'm going to make the body. So it's all about making a really good cylinder. The other thing you got to remember when making lids and the body is everything needs to be round. If this turns out to be oval or ellipsoidal or something, it won't, the top, where the lid's going to seat, right? It's harder for me to make a lid that fits really good. So the quest always is to make the best lid you can, right? Can you think, so why are lids even important, right? I don't know. Why are lids important? It is important because you are trying to make one piece of clay fit another thing, right? You're trying to make two, which is not something that as a second term ceramics person that you've done yet, right? So this is trying to teach you to control, have some precision in your throwing, right? We're trying to figure out how to become a better person, right? And struggle through life, and this is how we do it, is we learn how to make better lids. You'll become a better person, right? That's life, right? And so we are always seeking the next thing. If you can learn how to make a lid, you're learning control over the clay. It's like the next thing, because you guys are probably wondering, I'm getting pretty good at pots. I want something new, some new mountain to conquer, right? So this is it. Lids. All right, so I centered, right? I'm centered, ready to go. So there we go. And remember that the width of my pot can't be really wider, right? The base of my pot can't be wider than this. So here we go. We're going to open. Everything's good so far. I'm going to open. I'm going to check the depth, the thickness here. Bloop. Check the thickness. Woohoo! Right? So it's like that thick. It's a little bit thicker than normal, but maybe it's thicker than what I would, just a tad thicker than what I normally would do. I'm going to mentally note that for later with the understanding that maybe I can trim a bigger foot on here, right? Since it is a little bit bigger and wider than normal. Oh, there we go. There we go through again. So, and just like anything, I'm gonna make two pieces for this, right? There is this piece and then the lid piece. So I wanna make sure every step is going really well. If I had screwed this up and made it too thin or something, I would just make this into a bowl or cup or something, right? I wouldn't go through all the trouble to make a corresponding lid piece if I had screwed it up or messed it up somehow. Right, so I spent some time to clean out the bottom, smooth out the bottom, and then I'm gonna throw a cylinder here, just like normal. Let's go from the top view, right? I'm gonna compress that top in like that, just to switch it up. And then I'm gonna use my fingers down here to do the raising. This is more fun from the side, right? I push, here we go, I go up like that, woo, right? Also, when I'm making lids, I do not wanna make this super thin, right? Because when pots get super thin, they get really weak and get ovalized sometimes. So I want to leave a little bit of strength here just as insurance, right, for myself. So I'm saying that to myself mentally because John loves to throw thin sometimes, right? If this were a cup or something, I would try to make it thin, right? That's just the way it is. I like thin, light cups. I'm spending some time doing some maintenance right here. You saw what I did. I spent some time rounding this off, right? Because this is the most critical interface for the lid, right? The lid is only going to touch on the inside and the top of this. If this is all jacked up and everything messed up, the lid won't fit right. So I'm spending some time, if it looks a little funny, I'll spend some time pinching and pushing down like that with my hand just to kind of round it off. Then I'll come back through, wet it down, and go again. Here we go. And that, I think I'm getting close to this is the last raise for this. So I'm taking it really easy as far as how hard I'm compressing the clay, like how much more do I really want to raise, right? And I slowly let go, right? There we go. So now I have a pretty even cylinder that's pretty straight up and down. I'm going to clean up the inside here, right? So there's some water lurking around. I'm going to swab that up. Right? And then I'm going to use the rib thing. Remember, I'll rib it from the inside and outside like this, togetherness. Let's back that away a little bit so you guys could see it a little better. Right? So let's do there, right? And so here, remember that when I'm using these ribs together, the outside rib is, I use the flat side on the outside, boop, right? And I use the round side on the inside. I'm working on the right-hand side of the clay, right? The clay that is spinning away from me. So left hand is on the inside. I push out, I'm pushing in. The other trick that you gotta watch out for is I turn this outside rib a little bit this way. So it's actually crossing. If you look at the ribs, like if you could look straight on without the pot, the ribs are actually not pushing together parallel like that. The outside rib is crossed a little bit. And why is that? I think we've talked about that. Is this is a flat surface, right? The cylinder that you just threw may not be flat. It may be a little bit zigzaggy down. So if I just touch it flat, it'll just be touching on only the parts that are sticking out. When I turn it like that, let's see if we can get it on camera. Let's just turn it a lot more than it would be. It's only going to touch in that very middle. So I have control over what part it is touching, but it's not usually turned that dramatically. So the cylinder comes up, hits the middle part of the rib, and then flies away, right? So and then you only generally, the better your cylinder is, the less you need to turn this to the side. If that makes sense? So here we go, this, and then like this, but turn to the side. So you see I just turned it, and then here we go. And I use that rib like that, and I go up the outside like that, like that. So all that goop comes off. Let's do it from the side. You have to do it a few times. So let's get a low, good shot, good angle shot of that so you can see that, right? That's one of the secret little tricks that sometimes people forget. So here, that would be straight, but then boop, I turn it to the side and I go, right? The inside rib is straight up and down, like that. Now you can also do it with the curved side like this. You can also do it this way, but it's harder to control just a little bit, right? But you can also do it with the curved side. If you're doing it with the curved side on the outside, you don't have to turn it. But I might have been turning it because that's always my instinct, is to turn it. All right, so everything, I swabbed off everything, right? Inside, outside. If you look on the inside of the cylinder, it looks really clean. There's still a little bit of water lurking down there, so I'm gonna swab that up one more time. Now, I can do anything I want with this, within reason, meaning I can push this around. I could just make this keep it like this and make a lid for it, but this isn't that exciting. But if you just wanted a straight cup with a handle, boom, you could just leave it like this and cylindrical. But let's do some pushing around a little bit so it's smooth and happy. Let's just take my rib here and bulge out. Let's create some bulginess here. Right? And I'm always being super watchful that this is still staying round, not getting ovalized. So here I'm reaching inside and pushing out. Okay, that looks good. Now, for me, right, I could stop there, but look at this. I've already made some of these, right? So that's not exciting. Let's make something slightly different, right? So this is a little bit unplanned, a little bit off script, because I was just going to make this, but now we're diverging a little. Let's see if we can make something that's a little bit more bowl shape, right? That is more open, and then we'll just make a giant lid to go on top. So the wider this opening gets, the bigger the lid needs to be, right? So I'm gonna take this rib, and I think I left enough clay. The part I'm worried about is, did I leave enough clay that as I stretch this out, is it gonna get oval or something? So I'm just gonna push up here and just push it outward a little bit. So you see that how it, all of a sudden the volume just increased. Right? And so what I'm thinking is, instead of the lid, I want the lid to come down on the widest point of the pot. So the rim then needs to be the widest point, and the lid will sit on this wider thing. And the thing that I'm worried about as I stretch this clay will keep getting thinner and thinner and thinner, weaker and weaker and weaker, and more chance of ovalizing, right? Well, as I do this. And we've all seen that. What am I doing with my outside hand? I'm just holding it here, just feeling it, because a lot of times as your pot collapses, this is the area that will move first, right? You'll feel that part start to slump down differently than the rest of the pot. So I'm keeping my fingers here, so it's kind of like a way of seeing what your pot is doing or feeling what your pot is doing in a way that you can't see. That makes sense? Because I can't really see this part if I'm watching here above it, but if I have my hand here, I'll feel instantly if the pot starts undulating back and forth. So I'm going to push it out just a little bit more here, push it out a little bit more. So I guess we're making this into like a bowl shape, a tall bowl. Ooh, how about a mixing bowl with a lid? Right? I don't know. So yeah, mixing bowl with a lid, I guess. Something like that. So all right, so for bowls, right, I'm very concerned about the inside. How do we transition as we come down here, right? How the wall transitions down and how it transitions to the flat floor that I've created. So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time doing that. It just drives me nuts when I find out later that I didn't do a good job in that transition. So then I'll come back down over here and fix this, just tidy that up. So the most important part here is the rim, right? Because that is the interface between this and the lid. Is it round? It looks pretty round. Is it level? Like you don't want it undulating up and down either. So is it level? It looks pretty good. So I'm good. If it's not round, if it's ovalized, I would say, and if it's ovalized a little, you're okay. If it's ovalized a lot, just don't make a lid for it. Just make another pot. Right? That's what I would do, because then your lid's never really going to fit well, because I can make a good round lid. I don't know how to make a good oval lid on the wheel. It's hard. All right, so here, there we go, and I'm going to wet this top down, and then I will and I'll do this. Boy, this one's really long. There, oh, look at that. So I want a nice, beautiful, round interface. Why? Because, I mean, why am I bothering with making this nice and round? Because a lot of times the lid breaks or something, right? And it's okay to have any sort of thing going on here, but I like it round because this could be a bowl if I drop the lid, right, and break it or something. All right, then I will undercut it off the outside, woohoo, like that. All right, so now let's talk about calipers. So I need to clean off my hands. And then I'll get out my special John Hasegawa models. So this is my, let's go top down, right? So this is the thing. This is the lid I'm about to make. And you see where they interface is right here. The inside edge of this, right, has to match up with the outside edge, that corner right there, like, you guys see that? My hand's in the way, right? So, and then there's an overhang thing that happens there. Bloop. So the critical space is measuring this spot to that spot, that width, right? And then as I'm making that, I'd measure it to there on this guy. So here we go. So here we have calipers. Woohoo! And we'll talk about both of these calipers in a second. So I am going to take this caliper and measure from here, inside corner. And since these calipers are slightly different, right? You see that? How I just measured? We'll use two calipers because you may not be able to find those red ones, so we'll use these other ones. We have tons of these regular calipers. And you thought like calipers were like a thing of like, because they used to use calipers a lot back in the day, like slide rule days, and we don't really use them anymore that much. There we go. So I measured from that to there, and I set them aside very gently, because if I knock those around, I'm in trouble. And then I'm gonna slice it off. Did I slice it off yet? I don't think I did. So I'm gonna slowly slice this off while it's spinning, whoop. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this pot close by. So I'm pulling this pot off, right there, and I'm gonna set it close by, like over there. I like to be able to still see it, for it to still be in my field of view. So we're gonna make two lids for this, right? One, just to show you two different examples. So this is the lid that we were talking about before, right? This is the way it looks when it comes off the wheel. This is wheel, this my hand here, this wheel head, it goes boop on the wheel head, so I throw it like that. It's, the blue part is solid clay. The red part's the clay that we'll trim off the blue part later. That makes sense, everybody? So here we go. I need a bigger piece of clay than I thought. Thank goodness I had a lot of clay, right? So this is the same blob I got in my bowl or my thing. So I have to kind of guesstimate this. I'm showing, so I'm over here, I'm looking at my pot and I'm comparing that lid. I think that'll work. I'm gonna add a little bit more. Okay, here we go. So now bring this back over, right? Now that I got it on there, I think I got too much clay, right? And it's hard to tell, like, how much do you need? You just gotta guess. It's better to have more clay than what you think you need, right? So I gotta center this up. All right, here we go. Push back down. So this will go pretty fast. There we go. So now a couple things I need to think about. Remember that I had measured the inside width of that guy there, right? There, right? So this lid needs to be at least that wide, right? As wide as that, because that makes sense, or else it's just gonna fall through. So this mound, if you look, this is what makes these calipers so great, right? You see how it's hard for me to measure, but if I flip these calipers over, it has the other side, so I can quickly see that, right? You see how I can bring that all the way down, and you can see that it's not wide enough. And that is to the inside, right? The inside of the thing I made. So it actually needs to be wider than that, right? Because I'm measuring this, I'm measuring that part right there, and I need to go out wider out to there. So here we go. I need to push this down, so we need to make it wider. So remember when we did plates, there's a special move to keep the clay from folding over on itself outside. I keep my hand on the outside like that, and I push down like that to make it spread out with the hand here to keep it from folding over. So I keep bringing this back. You see, because I'm very bad at guesstimating how far it should be, right? I'm very bad at that. So I will just keep pushing it down, right? And pushing it down, pushing it down. Now that I got the clay here, I just feel like maybe I should have had more clay. Maybe I don't have enough clay. So you see, I'm barely there right now. It needs to be wider still. So here we go. Ooshaw! There we go. I think that we're about there. All right, we're good. So you see that I have enough, I have a little bit of overhang there. That will be my overhang. I think I need to push it out a little bit more. All right. Here we go. So now I'm going to open this so it's wide enough. Now I just got to open this. So we got to get close up for this. So when I open, I need to just start in the middle, and I'm going to make this slightly domed upward. So you see that? So it's going to be slightly domed upwards. I like that. So when I trim it, I can have a slightly positive curve on top. So here we go. We're going to go down. And then I measure just to make sure I left enough clay, because if I didn't leave enough clay, I would immediately stop. But I can make it thinner than normal. And then I'm going to smooth that out, and then I'm just going to start pulling back. So you ever notice that when you pull back, sometimes you end up with this bead of clay that's jamming, that's going up, that's kind of squirts up? That bead of clay will become the flange. Naturally, just leave it there. Right now it's a little bit early, so I'm going to suppress it back down, I'll fold it back down, but then I'll keep opening it up. Woohoo! And you see the bead of clay will slowly get bigger and bigger. You see that as I open? I'm going to take care of this middle a little bit because I want a nice beautiful curve, like curving upwards out of here. So here, and then I'll slowly keep opening. You see that bead of clay keeps getting bigger and bigger. That's what we want. So I'm still a long ways out, right, from getting there. I can push it down a little bit because I'm afraid that it's going to break off. There we go. There, I keep adding water into it, and you see how it's traveling upwards. I got a nice flange now established, right, for myself. Now it's getting close, right, and I would love it if the flange worked out completely. So you can see I start bringing this guy back in to measure that distance, right? You see that? And what I need to measure is the very base of this here, right, where the base of this meets the clay. Now, let's talk about this guy. Let's say you don't have the red calipers. I only have these ones, right? That's a problem for me. You can kind of get away with visually doing it, but the other thing you can cheat a little bit. One is you can get this calipers and you can just measure it this way. I've done this before, right? You see that, how I can measure. It's a little bit tricky to show, but I could just do it this way. When you only have one set of calipers, you can measure from, oh wait, you guys can't see that very well. So here you can measure from inside edge to inside edge like that. You guys see that? From there to there, you could do it that way. Or if it was still the other way, right, you could take a pair of calipers and let's go to the side view, is you can measure how we did the first time, like that, right? You see that? I'm measuring from here to here. Oh no, this way. Ha! I measure this way, inside, and then you just get a second pair of calipers. Let's go top down again. And then you measure, you just set the calipers to each other. That makes sense. So this one now will work as long as, but this one is a little bit better, right? Because it does both things at the same time, which is awesome, right? So we'll just go back to this one because this is simpler, cheaper, right? And so I'm measuring like, whoa, I still got a long ways to go. So I will keep opening this up a little bit more. There we go. Till I get to a point where I feel like I can measure again. Let's measure again. Oh, we're getting close. So let's lower this top camera down. Oh no, we'll go with this one. Woo, back over here. Right? So when I measure it now, it's getting really close, right? So let's talk about how do we finish this. It's actually scraping down the sides here a little. So we're close. Let's finish the inside. It's a little messy. This needs to have I like this to have a little bit of a dominess, but people will see the inside of your lid, right? When they pick it up, right? That's part of how they'll judge you, is they'll pick it up and then look inside, right, of the lid as part of the experience. So you could do something fun. You could put your stamp in there. You could put a little design in there. You can do whatever. Just make sure it's conscious, because that's one of the things they're going to do. And I guarantee you, when you go to craft fairs or see other potters, you're going to look at their lid inside. Just like how you, as informed potters now, you guys understand the first thing you do when you get to a place and you're looking at other people's pots is you look at the foot, right? Because you are knowledgeable. So here you want to do something. If you want to do something special, now's the time. Or you can not do something special and do what I'm about to do and just smooth it out. The one thing you kind of probably don't want to do is leave it looking bad, right? So you want to smooth it out, just like how we would with the inside of a bowl. right? So I'm spending time to smooth that out. Also, this does what we call compression and a bunch of other stuff. So that's looking pretty good. Ooh, let's do a thing. Let's put a swirliness in there since we feel a little bit like awesome, inspired. So we always think about swirls. Like, you ever see the swirls on the bottom of someone's thing? Swirls look like they go from the outside, inside out, but they actually go, when you want to put it on, it's easier if you put it on going really slow and going toward the middle. And I'll show you. I'm going to use the round side of this. We could do top down for this. And then I'll go like this. There we go, like that. And then that's my swirliness, right? Just for fun, because I was spending so much time talking about doing something awesome in the middle. It's a little bit raw, so I will now just, there it is. I'll spend some time just suppressing that down just a little bit. Now, we haven't actually finished the lid. We just been goofing around, right, tidying up. I always go back when I measure, because these things get knocked around. I will always come back over and recheck it against here, right? You guys see that? I always come back and recheck it against my pot. Bringing this over, it's a little bit big, just a touch big. So dun, 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 that's where this guy comes in. I like to have a pretty sharp corner here. So what do you mean by that, John? So we already know what this is done, but I like to have this corner to be kind of really ka-chonk, ka-chonk, so that there's a really clean joining there, attachment or place. So what am I going to do here is, this is a little bit wide. I'm going to take the corner of this, we'll wet it down, and I'll just stick this in there. I don't really use this tool for very much else. So I just take this. You'll notice that the tool is not straight up and down. It's tilted, and this corner is sticking out that way. So you can see on the overhead shot, right? You see how the corner is sticking out more that way in relation. And then like this. Also, when you're making this, I like it when, let's go side view. I like this part, the flange should be canted inwards like that. And we'll explain why. Let's explain why. You can make the flange straight up and down, but the issue is when the flange is sticking straight up and down, if it warps a little bit, clay warps, it could expand out so it doesn't fit anymore, right? But if you make it so the flange is tapering inward as it goes up, right? When your lid hits the edge of the pot, it will self-center back down onto your pot. That makes sense? So have it canted inward here and here at the, there. So here, and you'll notice that's probably in all the handouts I gave. So here, this way, and I just push this inward like that. You see how it instantly just cleans up all of that, right? And you see how beautiful that is? This, to me, feels just a little bit too straight up and down for my taste. So I'm going to use this edge of this here and kind of force it down a little bit. So watch. Like that. And I just force that down. And then, woo, that's looking really good. I'm getting super excited. I will measure one more time. We are close. We are close enough. So this is just a little bit big. So I'm thinking that I'll just use I'll use the corner of this to push it in just a little bit more. There we go. I think we're done. All right, so that's good. And then the only part that we got to fix is this little bitty bit right here. It's a little bit funny on the rim, so we're going to wet that down and round that off, because that also will be, people will judge you on that part too. So here we go. So I'm just going to round that off. I want this all nice, round, and happy. Spend some time on it, making it look good. All right, so then I will undercut this a little bit. This seems really big and tall, right? But I will come back later and trim that. We'll trim some of this off. So I'll undercut this pretty aggressively because I got to trim some of that clay off. All right, so that goes away. And then we wire it. I always make these on bats, and I don't remove them, right? So these, I like these green bats for this because it doesn't take up much space on my shelf, right? So the green bat goes away, so I don't need that one anymore. And so now let's make one of these types, right? Let's think about that, because this one hunkers down into the pot more, right? So it has a lower center of gravity. So especially on a teapot or something, this sort of lid is really good because the other lid sticks up and over. This hunkers down in. We'll make that one now. Here we go. for this sort of pot, the one I just made, it's probably not gonna look good, right? It's not the best pot for that. So we're not gonna, it won't look good on there, but we're just gonna try anyways. So here, this is gonna take a lot of, let's just use this whole piece. There's a lot of clay for this. This is the reason why we do this one. I forgot. I was like, why are we doing this lid? This one, you throw the knob at the same time that we make the lid. So this lid sits on the wheel head like that. You throw the knob now. I forgot. That's why we do this lid. I was like, how come we have this on the agenda for today? Because you guys, it's fun to really cool and awesome to be able to throw a knob at the same time, right? So here we go. This is a lot. This is probably way too much clay, but it's always better to start with too much clay than not enough clay for this sort of thing, because I can always trim it off. So we're trying to progress along. It's going to be one more raise and lower, and then we're ready to go. So remember that I started off with one kind of clay, right? All one ball that I wedged together are really good. All right, I think we're ready. So here we go. So I still have this guy here, right? My measurement, this is here. Ooh, wow, it's actually kind of close, right? So we're actually good, and it's because we started off with more clay. I think we have way too much clay, but we have way too much clay. So I want to center it up again and just pull off a chunk. There we go. I think that's better. I think we still have too much clay. So I'm going to center this off. So what am I trying to do? Where's my special cylinder? It dropped. So this part here at the base is going to be this part here, and that part there needs to kind of fit inside the pot, right? So that for us is a crucial measurement point. That makes sense? So how wide this mound is now is the critical part. So I'm going to check now to see if it's wide enough or how wide it is, right? And so this mound is actually really close. It's the skirt of it right here is too wide. This part isn't quite wide enough. So I'm going to push this whole thing down a little. So I actually have way too much clay. I'll just push it down a little bit further to see if I can get it right. Like that. Oh, it's close, right? So now it's too wide. The calipers don't drop down all the way. That's okay. The good thing about this is this type of lid is this part is trimmable, right? I can trim this. So if this part is too wide down here at the bottom to fit in here, bloop, 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 I can trim that back, no problem, right? Because there's a lot of clay down there to trim away. So that's okay. I can live with that, right? So now we're going to get ready for, as long as it isn't too crazy. Let me check to see if it's really crazy or not. It's not too crazy. I want to push it in a little just to make life a little bit easier. All right. So there is way too much clay here. Now, let's talk about what we do next. We are going to go down off center, because right there in the middle is my knob clay. Okay, so I go down off center and I leave like a pillar of clay in the middle, and we'll tell you what to do. And I go down to the depth I want to go. So just like as if you were throwing a regular pot, how far deep do you go, right? You go through and measure. That's too thick. I go down some more. Like that. So you kind of already see it now. That's starting to form up. That's good thickness. And then I will pull this out, because I will pull this out some to widen it a little if I can. Now, before I finish this, I finish my knob, right? So, and you finish the knob from the top of the knob down to the bottom. The reason why we do that is the knob we just do it first. I'm trying to think. I used to have a reason why I used to do it first. Now I don't remember. And we just throw this solid thing. So you see I rounded the top and then I squish it in. We want to finish the top of the knob first, because when we create this little underhang thing, when we undercut it like that, it gets really weak, and it does need some way for you to get your fingers underneath. You just can't have a round blob like this. Is once you glaze it, it's too slippery, right? I need an undercut away from my fingers to fit under so I can pull it off. So here I just do this like this. I'm rounding the top. So you see I'm spending time finishing the top of the knob, and then I'll start going underneath it. So I'm starting to squeeze under. Now, as I am playing with a very, very small piece of clay, like we would never throw a pot out of this amount of clay. The smaller the amount of clay, the faster you can go on the wheel. So I could just jam on the gas. You see that? How I'm slowly undercutting it. As I do that, the way I feel about what I did up here on the top of the knob starts to change, right? I am not that excited. I feel like the knob is a little squatty. So I'm going to take this before I finishing like this. It's still really thick down there. I will round this off some more. You see I'm changing the profile of it on the top. And I probably, for me, I like it when it's kind of symmetrical a little bit, like the curve kind of swoops around. So I'm doing that. I may squeeze it a little to make it narrow it up like that. You see I'm still able to make changes like that. If you want to, you can get a rib in here and rib it a little if you want to, because you can kind of flex a rib around it. I'm not going to do that, but you can, right? Do whatever you can while the base still has some thickness. And then I'll come back in here and start squeezing it up into the air. You see how it kind of squirts up? It's kind of magical. And then I still get a little bit of adjustment time, but it's now gotten a lot weaker right down there, and I can underdo that, like undercut. You also got to think about how high a profile do you actually want your knob to have, because you can see how I knocked it off center. It's because it's getting weak, right? So we're done basically doing that. All right, so now I reach under here and just start smoothing this area out. Now I throw this part of clay. So remember that this base width is critical, because that base width is always needs to fit inside right there. That's actually, this base width needs to be the thing that keeps the pot from rattling around in there. So I don't want to push this in when I'm throwing. If I really crank down here when I'm throwing, just like how we do when we throw a cylinder, some of us, me included, push in a lot from the outside. You probably can't do that, because then you'll narrow this up too much, right? And it won't fit very well. So you got to be a little bit careful. But this is just way too chunky, so I'm going to just push this out from the inside, right? I'm moving this with my inside fingers and pushing it out. You see that? I'm just trying to resist, right, this clay moving. Right, and then I'll go up a little, start throwing an outward looking thing. You see that, how I threw it kind of up and out? So now you begin to see the lid starting to take shape. I'm coming back in here and smoothing this out a little. Why am I doing that? Because I want to be ready to be done. Because once I finish this, I want to be close to being done. Like I don't want, so I'm pushing this out here a little bit more, and I'm going to throw it a little thinner, and then I'm going to start folding this down. Now I get to decide what I want to do, because I could actually do this thing where this thing hangs up, way up, and then has a little bend up here like that. I could do something like that, right? And then that pot, right, will hang, this lid will hang way down inside, right? I could do something like that where the lid hangs down, because this wall here goes up for a while and then makes a turn, right? There's lots of things you can do, right? So you guys see that, how deep that would be? That's okay. Why would that be important? Like make sure, like if you want something that really seats down deep so that it's actually like a storage thing, right? Where the lid isn't being taken off all the time and you really need it to fit really secure, security, fit, it never kind of coming off is really important. That's a good way to do it. But most of us aren't going to have something like that, where you probably want a lid so you can get it on and off really easy. So something where that drops down like that is too extreme, right? I'm going to lower this deck down like that. I'm pushing in a little bit. There we go. So here, then I'm going to flatten out this. So it's beginning to get close, right, to what I want. I'm going to begin using a rib here to get it close. Now, I'm going to start cleaning up this inside section a little bit here, like that. Oh, God. There we go. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. I'm cleaning up how this interface here looks, right? Just doing some maintenance here, right? And so I used a rib to flatten that out. So it's getting close to the profile I would like. Now, it is too wide by a lot. Right? Now I'm going to, with this pot here, so back to, oh, let's just do it this way. I'll show you this. So this lid then, inside, the inside part of the lid, which is right underneath here, which you can't see anymore, fits inside here, the bowl or whatever, right? The lid needs to hang off and over this space. So let's look at this guy here. I'm going to measure now to get another measure calipers and measure how wide I want it, and like how wide do I want it hanging over. Maybe that, right? And then I'll bring my calipers back over here and just kind of use them. So you see how this lid is now too big, right? It's hanging out way like an inch over. So I can use the caliper, one caliper here. Let's get really close here and very carefully touch. I guess you guys got to see it, the whole thing, I guess, for me to do this right. So I'm just going to use the calipers, get it centered, and use the tip of one of these guys and just touch it very lightly to the clay while it's spinning. And that will put a line on there. See how I put a line on there? And that's about how wide I want my lid hanging over, because I already measured to the bowl, so it had about the right amount of overhang, right? And I bring it back over here, and then, dun, 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 I just take my needle tool and cut off the extra. Right now, if I'm nervous that I'm not getting it right, I can walk that line out a little, because I could always trim this back. So let's just do that. Let's just walk that line out a little, and I just make the cut all the way through. Like that. Slice that baby off. Woohoo! And then that's my lid. Right now, for me, I went off script by making that first thing into a bowl. I don't think I would put a lid like this on a pot that's this wide. It just, I don't know. We'll have to see next class if it looks okay or not. I'm taking my time to round that off. Even though I know I'm probably going to trim this, right? That this is probably too wide. I'm taking the time to round that off. I'm taking the time to clean it up, right? You guys see that? Taking my time. There we go. And then I undercut it just a little bit. Like this. Oh, this undercutting is going to be rough. It's going to be hard. So the tool, when I undercut, can't go in straight. I get a little paranoid because this is a little tight. So I tip the tool over like that so it lays more flat, and I just stick the tip in. I don't try to remove any clay because I'm doing it kind of blind. And then I just wire it off. So between now and next time, I need to let these dry, right? So that they're about the same dryness, because if they dry at different amounts, right, especially the pot and the lid, if they dry at different amounts, like this is harder, that is softer, the harder one will have shrunk more, right? And next class, we are going to make sure that they fit, but that doesn't work if one has done more shrinking than the other, because then later on, the other will do more shrinking later, and they won't fit very well. So my goal is to make sure they dry evenly. They're at even dryness. The trick is they might be different amounts of clay, right? This could be one clay could be a large jar, and the other one could be a small lid, a small opening. So the smaller piece of clay will always dry faster usually. So then I may need to bag up the smaller piece of clay, and while I leave the bigger piece of clay open more, right? Because the trimming is a critical step about making sure they fit, right? And it is crazy how much they shrink from now until when they're bone dry, right? And the critical moment is now next leather hard, having them at the same dryness when they're leather hard. That makes sense, everybody? So if right now they're on separate bats, right, they will all go together in a similar bag, and actually tomorrow I'll touch them to feel which one is drying out faster than the others. When they get leather hard, I will stack them all together somehow, and you'll see that next class how I kind of been storing them. We'll talk about what I needed to do in order to get them to the same dryness. Right, so next time we'll make sure that they fit really well. It'll be some trimming of the lids, right? I trim sometimes I end up trimming the lids so they fit beautifully and really good, right? All right, any questions? Try making some lids. Try making at least 2 things with lids, right? So you make one mother pot or whatever the base pot is, and then you try to make one with lids. So I only showed you flange lids. There's a good video about how to make gallery lids. It's in the where you find all the videos, right?